Hi, this is an AI and on with the story. Chapter 11. New look. 1 month later, a large crowd of people had gathered into the arena where the third exams of the Chunin exams are going to place. Currently all the contestants were there excluding Sayuri, who was training with Kakashi, and Naruto, who disappeared to train out of the village. Up in the cage's booth stood Mai Terumi the Mizukage, accompanied by her two bodyguards Aoi and Chojuro I the Raikage, who was accompanied by his two bodyguards Killer Bee and Yugito ni the Eight, and Two Tails Jinchuriki Onoki the Tsuchikage, who was accompanied by his two bodyguards Akatsuchi and his granddaughter Kuratsuchi the Kazekage, who was accompanied by his two bodyguards Baki and a random Sanjonin. Hiruzen, however, had no guards with him, thinking they were unnecessary distractions, especially in his own village. Well, Hokage Dono, I must congratulate you on having most of your ninja to the finals, Onoki said, but he couldn't keep out the obvious jealousy in his voice. Hiruzen smirked, also pleased with this year's Genin's progress. I must agree, but I must ask, where is the Uchiha at? Shouldn't she be here? I asked irritably. He despised people who were late, a fact shared with all other cages, but sadly Hiruzen had to deal with Kakashi Hatake. There's another missing, Mai said, noticing the odd number. If the Uchiha were to come, who is he? Hiruzen smirked. Probably the strongest genin I've seen. Well, except for Might Dewey, bless his soul, became as powerful as a cage defending his son, he said sadly. The other cages nodded, knowing that the ninja life didn't come without sacrifice. He'll be coming soon. He isn't late, but I hope he makes it in the next 5 minutes, or else he'll have to be disqualified, Hiruzen said in a worried tone. The Kazekage, or Orochimaru in disguise, smirked under his veil. I hope he never comes, he thought, his smirk growing ever wide. There he is now, Onoki said, pointing to a small figure entering from the gate. Naruto walked into the arena. He had no shirt, much to the likings of pretty much all the girls in his presence, but he had black and red bindings all over his arms. From his shoulder down he had on black Anbu pants with a pair of black shoes as well, but that wasn't the biggest change. Naruto's hair was black, but it wasn't like a dyed kind of black. It was this weird but natural type of color, like he had black hair for his entire life. To the girls it made him look mysterious and hot. Mai smirked. That's your piece of eye candy, eh, Hokage Dono? Why didn't you tell me he was so handsome? She said, unconsciously licking her lips. Every guy there sweat dropped, including Orochimaru in disguise. Then Yugito decided to continue. Handsome wouldn't be enough to describe him. He's hot, she finished, trying to find the right word. I looked at the Two Tails Jinchuriki in surprise. Yugito, he shouted, feeling embarrassed that one of his ninja would say such a thing. Yugito shrugged. I like what I like. Sama. She eyed the granddaughter of the Tsuchikage. He's hot, isn't he? Kuratsuchi, who had been staring at Naruto for a very long time, felt her cheeks heat up. She then stuck her nose in the air. Yeah, right, it'll take more than looks to attract someone like me, she declared, earning a pleased sigh from Onoki. Hiruzen sighed. I wonder what that boy did to himself. He could all but wonder. Killer Bee then talked to his tenon inside his head before speaking. Yo, that black-haired kid looks super keen. Why didn't you tell us he was the Nine Tails Jinchuriki? He rapped horribly, making everyone from Kumo sweatdrop at the man's lack of rhythm and rapping skills, but his so-called lyrics earned the attention of all the cages. That boy is the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, Onoki said, bewildered. Why didn't you tell us, Hokage Dono? Indeed, you already know who our Jinchuriki are. Why didn't you tell us? I asked. Hiruzen saw the same question in Mai's eyes as well, but not in the Kazecage's. Weird. He sighed. Well, it was a matter of security for the boy. A few years back he was tortured by some of the villagers. When he was just 5 he left the village for a long time after that. Now about a year back he came home, though something is troubling him at the moment. I just can't Figure out why though. I glared at the civilians down below. At my village Jinchuriki are treated like royalty. No one would dare attack them. They're just so loved, he said, pride in his voice. But then it turned dark. So why the hell is it any different for your village? Hiruzen sighed. I have no idea. Rakage don't know. Maybe it's because the beast killed many including the late Hokage, he said, wording his sentence carefully so not to trigger Onoki when Onoki didn't react to what he had said. Hiruzen gave out a relieved sigh, thankful with Naruto. Jiraiya of the Sannin had hand-selected his clothes, which made him quite embarrassed because all of the girls would stare at him. He could feel almost every eye in the stadium looking upon him, even the old ladies, which sent a chill up his spine. Now for the black hair part. Well, let the author show you the flashback. Jutsu. Naruto was practicing make storage seals. That was Jiraiya's training. He would work on seals for about 5 hours. Then he would do physical labor for the townfolk, earning him many pinch to the cheeks from the older women. His physical exercise also included running from the fangirls of the village that he and Toad Sannin were staying at. After that he would practice trying to summon the Kyuubi's chakra out for his own use, but so far he had no such luck. But today Jiraiya said he was getting something special. He guessed it would be the Toad contract, but he wasn't sure if there was going to be a problem since he had a contract with the Crows. But hey, it couldn't hurt to try. He was in the middle of doing a custom explosive tag when Jiraiya came walking up to him. Hey Naruto, ready for that surprise I promised you? He asked, a silly grin on his face. Naruto gave a simple nod, a small smile on his lips. Spending time with the old pervert helped him deal with the drama about Sayuri. Believe it or not, the man actually knew what he was talking about. Okay, you ready? I'm going to give you the opportunity that very few have ever had, but you do have 2 relatives who have it. Your father, he said, opening the Toad summoning contract scroll showing Minato Namakazi's name on it, and me, he pointed at his own name. Naruto smiled at the man. I would love to, I really would, but I'm not sure that the Crow contract would let me do that. Besides, wouldn't the Toads only want one summoner loyal to them? Jiraiya shrugged. Let's find out, shall we? Naruto pricked his thumb with a kunai and performed a set of hand seals before slamming it on the ground. Summoning jutsu, he whispered as he found himself on a big crow. Hello Kaneki-sama. Naruto greeted the king of the crows. Yes, go ahead and commented. I know you want to. Greetings Naruto, what is it you need of me? I see no battle, the crow replied. Respectively, Naruto pointed at Jiraiya from atop the large bird's head. He wants me to sign the Toad contract, but I had to make sure I wouldn't lose your clan in the process or would be breaking any rules, he said slowly. That's wonderful, the bird crowed. Puns. The Toads and the Crows have been great allies since we were made. I would gladly support you in having both contracts, the bird exclaimed. Naruto brightened, a large smile on his face. With haste he quickly signed the contract with his blood and went to make a hand seal, but was stopped by Jiraiya. Try to summon a Toad with the Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto nodded and began focusing. After around 5 minutes he found himself in a large sewer-like place. He walked forward and found a large cage. What he expected was to find a large 9-tailed fox threatening to kill him, but instead he found an extremely attractive girl sitting in front of him, a smirk on her face, naked. The nosebleed only lasted a millisecond, but enough for the girl to see her smirk grew even larger, and she laughed. I can't believe you were just getting off of a demon, she said, still laughing. She had red hair that went all the way down to her mid-back. She had an hourglass figure and red eyes. Her breasts were big, not bigger than Tsunade's, but bigger than most girls. She had 2 ears on the top of her head and 9 tails flowing from behind her. All in all, she was sexy, very sexy. Naruto glared at her. I didn't know you were a girl, he said, ignoring her first comment. Her smirk didn't fade. Oh please, she said, standing up and walking up towards the bars. Girls can be one of the most powerful things in the world too. I mean the 2 and 7 tails are girls. Both give their tenants lust. The Kyuubi and Naruto were standing just 3 feet away from each other. Naruto was trying to keep his eyes locked on hers but found it very difficult since she was sorta bouncing around, making her breast jump up and down. She noticed him struggling. I know you want to touch them. You can if you won't. I don't bite, she said lustfully. Naruto was tempted, very tempted. But he couldn't give in. Stop, he said in a command tone. Put some clothes on for Kami's sake, he said before turning around. The Kyuubi sighed. You're no fun, you know that, she said before shifting into clothes. They're better. Naruto turned around to see her wearing a t-shirt cut in half, exposing her smooth luscious stomach, and also wearing booty shorts. Naruto sighed. Yeah, I guess. Now listen. Here, I need you to lend me your chakra. I'm keeping us both alive, and we both know that when I die, you die, so how about you give me your chakra so I can keep you safe? Kyuubi laughed. How about no? She said, giggling to herself as if enjoying an old joke. Naruto glared at her. And why not? She shrugged. I don't want to give a powerless brat my power. I'm not powerless and you know it, he yelled angrily, losing his cool. The Kyuubi smirked. Yeah, right, and I'm not the Kyuubi, she said sarcastically. Naruto started growing angrier until she spoke up. I know. How about this? I'll give you a whole tail of chakra for a price. Naruto rose an eyebrow. What's this so-called price? He said. She curled her finger, indicating for him to come closer. He cautiously stepped forward, only leaving a few inches between him and the fox girl. I want you to change this sewer into a beautiful forest, she whispered in his ear. All you have to do is think it and it'll happen. Naruto nodded, thinking this was a small thing. She then grabbed his collar and smashed her lips into his. He felt a large surge of power go through him and his body growing physically stronger, making his abs more defined. Along with his biceps, he gave into the kiss, his lust finally getting to him, and it lasted for a whole minute before she back up, a slight daze over her head. Geez, you know how to kiss, she said. Dreamily, she noticed his questioning look. I transferred power to you. You can now fully control one tail of chakra without losing yourself in the bloodlust. Along with that, you've grown physically stronger and your normal chakra has increased greatly, and you got a banging kiss from me, so that's a bonus. Naruto's face was still red from the kiss the two shared. So that's it? He asked. She nodded. She then pushed him back. Now go back to your world, kick ass in my name, she yelled as he started to disappear. And what is your name? He yelled back, causing her to stop in her tracks before whispering. Kurama, she whispered shyly, bewildering Naruto before he disappeared completely. Naruto appeared back into the real world, still in a daze. Jiraiya was shaking him. Naruto, is that still you? He asked worriedly. Naruto nodded. Why wouldn't it be? He asked drowsily. Jiraiya pulled out a mirror from Jared knows where and showed Naruto as reflection. He had black hair. What the fuck? Flashback end. And that explained why he had black hair now. He had tried to make it blonde again, but to no avail. Dyes didn't affect his hair. He walked up to the rest of the Chunin hopefuls and stood next to Tamari. Hayate then appeared, eyeing Naruto carefully. You barely made it, he said. Naruto just shrugged. Hayate looked at a clipboard and read the first pair of names. Okay, first to go Kiba. Inuzuka versus Naruto Uzumaki, he announced loudly so that the crowd could hear. Applause was heard throughout the stadium. Naruto smirked and walked to the other end of the arena opposite to where Kiba was. This will be fun, he said with a cruel smirk on his face, making Kiba flinch in fear. Hayate looked at both contestants. Okay, are you ready? Naruto gave a determined nod, still glaring at Kiba. Kiba slowly nodded his head, still scared. Then begin, he yelled before jumping back out of the way. Naruto just crossed his arms, tilting his head and grinning like a madman, his eyes turning red. Ever since he had gained control over one tail of chakra, he had been able to find himself changing his eyes when he wanted to. He hoped it would startle or even scare his opponent, which he was very successful in. Looking at the way Kiba was very to move towards him, Naruto quickly got out a paper note and walked up to Kiba, slowly enjoying the boy's terror a little too much. I have a present for you, Kiba, Naruto said menacingly before slapping paper on the back of Kiba's neck in a speed that Kiba couldn't follow. Kiba then felt something on drip from the back of his neck down his back and then slowly cover his entire body. The stadium started laughing at him, but he had no idea why. But Naruto did. He had altered Kiba's appearance. Now the boy was all the colors of the rainbow, including his hair, which made him look absolutely ridiculous. Kiba, who was talking to Akamaru about why everyone was laughing, glared at Naruto. You bastard, he shouted, change me back right now. Naruto adopted a thinking pose. No, he said before sucker punching the Inuzuka in the stomach and then grabbing the dog by the fur on its neck. You're not responsible for your partner's actions. How about you sit down all the way over there? He pointed to the other part of the arena, and I'll give you a piece of bacon, he promised. The dog nodded eagerly, forgetting all about Kiba as it munched on a piece of bacon that Naruto had given him. Naruto turned towards Kiba. Okay, let's get this over with. I want to face that Tamari girl. I wonder what'll happen when two wind users face each other, he said before grabbing 10 shurikens, all secretly attached to wire, which were knotted onto his fingers. He threw them and manipulated them with the thin wire to make them surround Kiba, strapping his arms at his waist. Kiba snarled, big trick Dobi, he insulted. Naruto smirked. Oh, it will be for me, that is, he said before the wires all of a sudden burst to life with lightning electrocuting Kiba, making him scream. He collapsed to the ground, his body smoking. Naruto smirked. Payback's a bitch, Naruto said, looking at the smoke rise from the boy's unconscious body. He smirked and looked straight into Sume Inuzuka's eyes, who was seething, and gave her a mock bow. Naruto then put his hands in his pockets and walked away. The battle between Tamari and Shino had been exactly the same as the fight between Tamari and Tenten. Shino, who had tried so hard to get his bugs at least a foot away from her, could only watch as his entire insect colony was blown away. So Tamari had won. She walked over to Naruto and sat next to him in the winner's box. Your match was brutal, she stated. Naruto shrugged. He had it coming, he replied, a pleased smirk gracing his lips. Tamari eyed him carefully. Is it because he kissed Sayuri, or because he seems like a dick overall? Naruto scowled. Both. No one messes with Naruto. Namakazi. No one, he said, looking into her eyes carefully, his eyes flashing red with slits to get his point across before returning back to their sky blue. Tamari was taken aback by his words but quickly changed the subject. So new look? Naruto nodded. It suits you. You look way better with your shirt off. Naruto's cheeks burned a small red before shrugging it off. Shika is going to lose, he said plainly as he watched the shadow user start to fight against the green taijutsu beast. Tamari rose an eyebrow. And how do you know that? Naruto pointed at Rock Lee. That boy is wearing at least 200 pounds on both legs and he's still very fast. Shikamaru's shadow will never catch him. Shika has strategy, but Lee has brute strength, and sometimes that can triumph intelligence. Just watch. And true to his word, Tamari watched as Shikamaru was completely dominated by Rock Lee. Lee's speed was just too fast for Shika to comprehend, causing Lee to be able to sneak up on him and deliver a quick kick to the face, knocking him out cold. Tamari looked at Naruto in surprise. I'm impressed. You're smart for a kid your age. Naruto rolled his eyes. First you call me attractive, then you call me kid. PFFTI turned 14 in a week. How old are you? 15-16 inches. Tamari nodded. I turned 16 in a few months. Naruto whistled. What, you have a good 2 years on me, he said. His voice had jealousy evident in it. Tamari smirked, seeing her ego was being stroked. He decided to knock her down a few pegs, but then again that also means that someone younger than you is also stronger than you. How does that settle in your stomach? Tamari blushed in embarrassment. Shut up. Naruto smiled and looked at the arena to see Neji standing by himself. Where the hell is she? She's going to be disqualified, he stated. Tamari shrugged before tapping his shoulder and pointing to the other end of the arena. There, Sayuri had appeared back and back with Kakashi in a leaf shushin. She had a smirk on her face. Am I late? A rock hit her in the head. Hell yeah, you are. Now go fight. Sakura yelled from the stands, causing Naruto to laugh. Sayuri glared at her two teammates. And what the hell are you laughing at? She yelled. Naruto's laughter stopped. You. She then noticed his difference in appearance and felt her cheeks get warm. She shook her head. Focus. Kakashi waved her off and headed to the stands to watch her. She looked at Neji and got in her stance. Him doing the same. Hayate looked at the two contestants, seeing they were ready, and started the match. Chapter 12, Wind and Destiny. Quick author's note: Naruto looks like Menma from Road to Ninja except no Sharingan. If you don't know him, Google it now. On with the story. Sayuri charged Neji with speed that rivaled Rock Lee's, which stunned both Lee and Guy. She quickly kicked Neji in the face, catching him off guard before backflipping backwards. Neji smirked. Prodigy versus prodigy, both are destined to win, but one of us will lose, and fate has decreed you the loser and me the victor, he said before charging the Uchiha and started trying to strike her with his gentle fist style. Sayuri had a smirk on her face. She was evading all the blows with ease. She mentally thanked Kakashi for putting her through hell so she could get faster. She quickly jabbed Neji in the ribs, making the boy go back a little bit and wince. In pain, she quickly threw a couple shurikens at him, but he dodged them and charged her again. She made a couple of hand signs before she blew out a large fireball at Neji, who barely dodged it as it burnt his left shoulder. The clothes on his body were burning as he struggled to pat it out. Sayuri took the opportunity of the distracted Hyuga and ran towards him before ramming her elbow in his temple, knocking the boy out instantly. Winner Sayuri Uchiha, Hayate shouted, causing the crowd to cheer for the last loyal Uchiha. She smirked before moving to the winner's box and sat down next to Naruto, blushing again as she saw his now hot figure. She didn't speak, furthering Naruto's sadness slightly. Okay, Hayate announced, ready to start the next match. Will Naruto, Uzumaki and Tamari of the Sand please come down to the arena? Naruto smirked. You ready to lose, Tamari-chan? He said. His eyes were filled amusement as she blushed a bright red. She fought her blush down while Sayuri was seething with jealousy behind the blondes. Of course, Naru-kun, she said seductively, causing Naruto's cheeks to redden. She took pleasure in seeing the roles reversed for once. They walked down the stairs, leaving Sayuri glaring at Tamari's back. That bitch, she's trying to steal my Naru-kun'll show her, she thought triumphantly. She quickly devised a plan of revenge on the girl, smirking while thinking Tamari and Naruto were standing at least 10 yards away from each other, both with confident smirks on their faces. Hayate saw both genins were ready and began the match. Tamari took out her fan quickly and sent a air blast at Naruto, who in return quickly put his hands on the ground, earth style mud wall. The wind clashed into the mud wall, cracking it. Naruto's eyes widened, not expecting that to happen. He quickly jumped over the mud wall, charging at great speeds towards Tamari, shocking her as she threw a kunai at him. He grabbed it in midair, but realized a second too late that a paper bomb was on it. The bomb exploded and the dust from the ground surrounded where Naruto was. Tamari's eyes widened. Naruto-kun, she shouted, worried for him up in the cage box. I snorted. If he can't handle a paper bomb, then he was all for show, he said disdainfully. Yugito was slightly saddened by the handsome boy's death but just shrugged mentally. The Mizukage rose an eyebrow at the Reikage. What are you talking about? I can still sense his chakra signature, Mei said in a matter-of-fact tone. Maybe the Reikage dono can't detect chakra signatures. I suddenly felt a mass of chakra swarm the entire stadium. The dust cleared, leaving an unscathed Naruto, a smirk on his face. Tamari looked at him with a mix of shock, surprise, and most of all relief. How are you still alive? She stuttered. Naruto ignored her question and began making hand signs. That was a good wind attack, Tamari-chan, but I wonder, can you repel a wind attack with that fan of yours? He said before a blade of wind appeared on his hand before he swiped the air twice as the blades shot towards Tamari at high-pitched speeds. Tamari's eyes widened as she tried to use her fan as a shield but watched in horror as he fan was cut into 4 separate pieces. She fell on her knees as she cradled the small pieces, tears flowing down her face. Tamari-chan, Naruto asked in a confused tone, not liking seeing her cry like that. She looked at him with anger evident in her eyes. My mom gave me this before she died, she yelled. Naruto's eyes softened before he slowly walked up to the girl and held out his hand. Let me see it, he said. Tamari looked confused. What? I said let me see it, he demanded easily took the fan from her before painting a seal on it. Tamari watched in amazement as the fan fixed itself easily. She looked up in shock at Naruto but didn't see him. She then felt a small pain on the back of her neck before she began falling to the ground completely unconscious. But before she could fall, Naruto grabbed her in midair and began walking towards the medics who were arriving on the scene. Winner Naruto Uzumaki, Hayate shouted as the crowd began cheering from the good match. Naruto gently put Tamari on the stretcher. Sleep well, he whispered softly before walking away to the winner's box. Satisfied with the outcome, how can he use such a technique? He's merely a genin. Jinchuriki or not, he should not have those types of jutsus in his arsenal, the Reikage shouted. Hiruzen smirked. Well, he was trained by 2 very strong people, possibly the strongest from Konoha. Everyone rose an eyebrow, wanting an answer. Well, one of his masters is Jiraiya of the Sannin, the other is the Nuke Nin Itachi Uchiha, he said, causing Mei to gasp. Does he have long black hair along with a weird necklace sometimes? She asked in amazement. Hiruzen rose an eyebrow but nodded. Nonetheless, her mouth formed an O shape and she began laughing. So that's why I didn't recognize the boy. I knew he seemed familiar but I couldn't put my finger on it. Itachi and Naruto-kun helped us defeat Yugara. They were a large help. Hiruzen was surprised by this new information. Itachi nor Naruto ever reported something like this had ever happened. He peered down at Naruto and began to wonder. What else don't I know about you? Chapter 13 Namakazi vs Uchiha. I give up, cried Rock Lee. As the match started, everyone who was expecting a large awesome match with the Uchiha once again face faulted to the ground, not including Naruto. If someone were to look at his face they would say that he expected it, and he did. Why are you giving up, Lee? Sayuri asked in a confused tone. She was ready to fight the boy, and to see him give up after working so hard unsettled her. Rock Lee smiled brightly, a little too brightly since Sayuri had to squint to see. I cannot fight the woman that I love, he shouted with a sparkle in his eyes. This caused many more people to get irritated at the boy, all except Guy, who was crying happy tears. You would do that for her? You're so full of youth, Lee. Guy cried out from the stands, earning many winces from the intensity of his voice. Hayate looked from Guy to Guy's Minimi in surprise before pointing his hand towards Sayuri. Winner Sayuri Uchiha. The crowds gave out a weak applause, not really impressed by the delay. Some however thought that it was romantic for the boy to give up the match for the girl. Now for the final match, Naruto Namakazi versus Sayuri Uchiha. He yelled before Naruto had left to put Tamari on the medic banner. He had told Hayate. To tell the truth to the crowds, Hayate had smirked at him and nodded, saying he was devious and sneaky and that he respected it. The crowd was in shock. This boy was the son, or at least related, to the fourth Hokage. Onoki was fuming as he glared at the boy. He's the son of that man, he said as he spat out with disgust. Hiruzen sighed. He knew Naruto would do something like this. He glanced at Onoki. He is indeed, but I hope this won't cloud your judgment on the boy. He is not his father. Onoki's face didn't change until he gave out a long tired sigh. I suppose so. Doesn't mean I have to like the boy. May nodded. That is only fair, but I don't see how people don't like him. He's quite charming. Actually, she said in a dreamy tone, getting weird looks from the other cages and looks of jealousy from the girls in the booth. She saw the looks. What, I'm only 7 years his senior. It wouldn't matter if we were in our 30s. She defended herself to the cages before turning to the girls. Yugito and Kuretsuchi, and no need to get jealous. He's only mine after all, she said as she licked her lips before looking back to the match in the arena. Hayate saw that both fighters were ready before starting the match. Both Uchiha and Namakazi didn't move as the wind began blowing Naruto's hair as a single leaf from the tree in the arena fell and both seemingly disappeared. Everyone's eyes widened as the stadium got extremely quiet, enough that you could hear a pin drop. Then Sayuri was seen hurling towards one of the walls and hitting it with a loud smack, making all the genins wince. Naruto then appeared again. His face had adopted a small smirk on it, obviously pleased with his actions. Sayuri picked herself off the wall before glaring at Naruto. Tisk tisk tisk, if you wanna beat me, you know better than trying to beat me at speed. It was then Sayuri's time to smirk. You're right. But that was never my intention. Naruto's eyes narrowed, his smirk disappearing as he saw a small glint of metal reflect in the sun. He quickly jumped up, avoiding a stream of fire that had come across the wire at a fast rate. Sayuri launched a dozen shuriken at Naruto, intent on hitting his side. But he quickly replaced himself with one of them and was now falling with style towards Sayuri. He quickly formed a Rasengan in his hand while Sayuri quickly went through a set of handseals before grasping her wrist. As lightning burst into her palm, she charged forward and glared at Naruto, her Sharingan spinning as she looked into his eyes. Their attacks met as a loud sphere of power enveloped them, causing the dust from below to cloud up the arena, not enabling them to see. The Hyugas instantly activated their Byakugans and all gasped in surprise and were instantly bombarded with questions from the spectators that just so happened to sit next to them. Everyone watched in suspense as the cloud of dust started to clear and were able to make out the two figures. Then it cleared all together and the whole stadium's blood froze. Naruto was impaled in the chest, right in his heart, by Sayuri's Chidori. He had a thin trail of blood going down his chin as he smiled at her with his eyes closed. You trapped me in a genjutsu when you looked at me. Hey, he said as he collapsed on his knees. He looked Sayuri in the eyes and saw tears flowing down her cheeks. I didn't mean to, she whispered. Naruto smiled sadly at her. Hey, who would have known, killed by the girl I swore to protect, he whispered as he fell on his back. Ya know, it's funny, I'm stronger than you in almost every way. But here we are, he choked out as he began coughing. Sayuri was instantly on her knees as she grabbed his hand, still silently crying. I'm sorry about everything. I didn't mean it when I said I hated you. I was just angry at Itachi because I thought this was his way of torturing me from afar, doing the impossible. Naruto smiled weakly at her. What do you mean? He asked. Sayuri smiled before she kissed him softly on the lips for a second before pulling back. I thought it was impossible for me to love again, she whispered. Naruto's eyes widened as he watched her confess. I thought that all I had was my revenge, but then before I knew it I had you. Thank you so much, she whispered. Naruto slowly reached his hand up using all his strength and used his index and middle finger to poke her forehead. I think I love you too, he croaked out before his body went limp, his eyes losing the life he had before. Sayuri started crying harder, not caring what people saw, her eyes unknowingly forming the Mangekyo Sharingan. Everyone's faces were in either horror, shock or sadness, or all three, including the cage's Sakura openly wept next to Kakashi as he watched in disbelief the dead body of his deceased sensei's son. I failed again, he thought. The genin were all crying at the lost as the sky above them boomed with thunder and was lit up with lightning before it started raining. The sky crying for the loss of the once blonde, now turned black hair boy. Everyone now accepted the fact with sadness or anger. Naruto Uzumaki Namakazi was dead. Chapter 14. Welcome to Hell. Naruto opened his eyes and the first thing he was the intense white of things. He also noticed how cold he was. He wrapped his arms around himself as he stood up. There was snow littering all over the place. Where am I? He asked in a confused tone, but was surprised to hear that his voice was now scratchy and rough. We're in hell, genius, a girl's voice said from behind him. He turned around and saw the girl that had lived in his stomach ever since he was born. Kurama? He asked. She smirked. In the flesh, she said in a sarcastic manner. But you killed us, idiot. Great job. Naruto then remembered what had happened. I'm dead, he said in surprise. He patted himself all over. I don't feel dead, and why in the hell would I be in hell? He yelled. Kurama shrugged. How should I know? I mean, you killed people before, but not needlessly. You had noble reasons for them, she said, her hand stroking her chin. I can explain that, a dark voice said. The two turned around and were met with a rather handsome man with tan skin, dark hair that was slicked over to the side, and a tuxedo on. The sins of the Kyuubi, he said, pointing at Kurama, transfers to the one containing it if and only if the Jinchuriki dies while the demon is inside of him. The Kyuubi has committed many sins in her lifetime which spreads to thousands of years, and so that passes on to you, Naruto. He smiled creepily, and I have fun torturing basically innocent souls. Let us commence. The white snowy land vanished into a dark room, and Naruto found his arms behind the chair, handcuffed along with his feet. He looked up in horror as he saw the same man holding a knife along with a sledgehammer. What are you going to do? Naruto asked fearfully. The man snapped his fingers once as a large table appeared before him as many torture devices showed up, and Naruto's shoes disappeared as well, leaving his feet bare. I'm going to have some fun, and I'm in luck. Not many people have a healing factor which will help you grow limbs back after I slowly take them off. He gave off a crazy scream of laughter before Kurama screamed from behind him. Don't you dare lay a finger on him, she screamed. She was strapped to the chair too, but she wasn't going to be physically tortured. She was going to be mentally tortured, being forced to watch Naruto be physically hurt. I won't lay a single finger on him, I promise. That's what my toys are for, he said with glee before setting the knife down and picking up a small dull sword. It'll take me a few swings to cut off any limbs. Please be patient, the man said in a giddy voice. Naruto watched in horror as the man walked up to him slowly, a grin gracing his features. The man quickly swung the sword down on Naruto's arm, and Naruto could only scream in agony as he felt it tear through his flesh before being taken out again and being forcefully pushed it down again, tearing even further. Naruto's scream rang out the laughter the man was having for hours on end. 5 years later, Naruto screamed as he watched one of his toes torn off once again. It had been 5 years in hell, and the torture was endless. The man in the suit had always found new ways to torture him, and he never had a break. Kurama had run out of tears as she could only watch him struggle in pain. He had his arms cut off, his legs cut off, his tongue cut off, his toes and fingers cut off, his eyes scooped out, his cheeks ripped apart, and toenails taken off. With a fork he had eaten his own guts once, but the man had said it was too messy and hadn't done it since he then felt his toes grow back before he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Nothing. No pain. He looked up to see the man grinning at him. Your eyes are now gray and empty. Your mind is now twisted and insane. Now who do you blame for your pain? Naruto looked up at the man weakly. You. Of course, he said with no emotion. He had lost those on the first year of torture, believing that pain was the only thing he would feel. The man clicked his tongue in a disappointing manner. Wrong. Did I give you these sins? Naruto slowly shook his head. Did the Kyuubi give you these sins? Naruto nodded. Then who gave you the Kyuubi? Naruto looked up at him. My father. Do you hate him? No. He loved me, the man laughed, but he caused you to suffer. He obviously loved the village more than you. Now do you hate your father? Naruto grinded his teeth together. Yes, he said forcefully. The man laughed. Do you hate him for choosing the village over you? Yes. Do you hate your mother for letting him do that to you? Yes. Naruto shouted, tears running down his face. Do you hate the village? Naruto looked at the man before his handcuffs broke. His hair started turning white from the roots. No, he whispered. Itachi-sensei loved the village with all he had. It would be foolish of me to hate what he loved. The man smirked. Good. Now Kami has more plans for you. I give you and the Kyuubi life once again, but this time I'd suggest getting her out and not dying, or I'll see you again. The room he had spent 5 years in had disappeared as he opened his eyes and felt cold metal underneath him and a piece of cloth covering his body. He felt the hole in his chest heal up and he thought, are you there, Kurama? Yes, Naruto-kun. She whispered. Naruto nodded to himself as he leaned up. Good, he replied in his thoughts before getting up completely. He was wearing absolutely nothing. He was naked. He saw a small pile of clothes in the corner as he walked up to them and saw a note. He picked up the note and read it. Dear Naruto, I hope you like the clothes I got you. They're made specifically for you. Enjoy. Mr. L. Naruto crumpled up the paper before putting on the clothes. They were all black. He had on a tight black sleeved shirt with a sleeveless jacket on that's collar went around the side of his head, only leaving an opening where his mouth was. The pants were black as well, reminding him of Anbu pants. He had his old shoes on as before, though he heard fighting outside of the building, which he only assumed was the morgue. He walked outside and saw Tamari defending Sayuri and Kin, who were guarding the academy students along with the other genin from their class, including Lee Tenten and Neji. Their opponents were Sand and Sound Ninja, and they were starting to fail. Naruto looked at the opposing ninja before cracking his fingers. Time to kill some people. Chapter 15. I'm back. The Sound and Suna ninja were surrounding the genin who were protecting the academy students. Konohamaru Sarutobi's class at that. Tamari and Kin, who had switched sides during the fight, were also defending the little ones, but their defense was slowly corroding. They were growing tired and weary, unable to keep it up for very much longer. Sayuri grit her teeth. Damn it, she yelled in frustration as another kunai hit her legs. It was the third one and she was faring no better than the other genin. She pulled the kunai out and threw it back at the offending Sound Ninja, hitting them in the stomach. Tamari quickly dished out another wind jutsu, blowing back the Sand and Sound Ninja away. Alike when she had woke up, she was heartbroken to hear that Naruto had died and then turned furious at Sayuri, the one who killed him. She was still angry at the girl, but she knew Naruto wouldn't have wanted her to stay angry. Then they all felt a huge surge of chakra close by, which stunned all of them and stopped the fighting for a split second before it began again. Sayuri was hit in the stomach, causing her to spit up blood and collapse on her knees. I know that Orochimaru-sama wanted to keep you're alive, but you know what the hell, a Sound Ninja said as he tried to bring down his sword, but was stopped when he was suddenly grabbed by his throat by a single hand and was slowly tightened till the man's neck broke. In front of Sayuri was Naruto with white hair. He had on a tight black sleeved shirt with a sleeveless jacket on that's collar went around the side of his head only. leaving an opening where his mouth was. The pants were black Anbu pants with a pair of regular black shoes. He was facing the shinobi attacking his home. You know, attacking someone's home when you were uninvited is something that's supposed to be frowned upon, he said. His voice was deeper than it was before, and he seemed a little taller than before. His snow-white hair was blowing in the wind, covering his eyes partially. The enemy ninja smirked at him. Yeah, and who are you? Our mommy, one of them said. Naruto rolled his neck, cracking it in many places. Trust me, if I was your mom, none of you would be standing. Oh wait, I don't need to be your mom to do that, he said emotionlessly as he suddenly stabbed a sound shinobi with his own hand right in his gut. I'll take your guts away, he whispered before pulling out the man's intestines. Enjoying the screams the man gave, he then wrapped the intestines around the man's neck before strangling him with them. All of the genin watched in horror as the man finally went limp as the now bloodied Naruto let go of the man's guts. This was not the Naruto they knew. This was someone new. Naruto turned to the other ninja. Come get some, was all he said before the shinobi charged him. He grabbed a kunai being thrown at him in midair. Before dodging a slash by another, he sliced the man's jugular open and threw the kunai into someone else's head. He dodged blow for blow and exchanged them in return with horrifying ease. The genin's horror turned to amazement as they watched Naruto dish out a major punishment, but that was not the only question they had for him. How was he alive? How did he get so strong so fast? How the hell was he alive? As Naruto finished up the last of the enemy ninja, he turned around. His face had splotches of blood on it. He stared at them blankly. I'm back, was all he said before he was tackled in a hug by the four girls. Sayuri, Kin, Tenten and Tamari, all of them had tears coming out of their eyes for one reason or another, not that he knew why. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to kill you, Sayuri sobbed into his chest. Why, you're back, Kin said happily, glad that her only friend was alive. Why, you idiot. You can't just go die and leave me alone like that, Tamari yelled. If you ever die again, I'll kill you myself, Tenten yelled. Ino, Sakura and Hinata were the only girls who actually refrained from doing anything as they smiled happily that the blonde-turned raven and now white-haired boy was back to life. Naruto hugged all the girls back well as best as he could. You try wrapping your arms around four girls and not cover them in blood. A small smile appeared on his face. It's fine, it was an accident. Yes, I'm back. I won't leave you again and I won't die again. Kami knows I don't want to go through that anymore. The girls all took a step back. What do you mean, through that anymore? Questioned Tamari. Naruto sighed before running a hand through his snow-color hair. Well, first I need to tell you all a few things. He then went on to explain everything about the Kyuubi and how she was sealed into him when he was born, and then due to her sins I was sent to hell and tortured by a man named Lucifer, who's probably Satan, for 5 years, which is equivalent to about an hour in real life, he explained. This time he was tackled into a hug by all the girls except for Hinata and Sakura, who were holding Kiba's sleeves as they were crying, using it as a tissue. I'm sorry, cried Sayuri. Naruto quickly replaced himself with a stick and adopted a serious expression. I already told you it's fine. But I'm sure Gigi will need my help. I have to go, was all he said before disappearing, leaving no trace of him being there except for the bodies that now littered the ground. Chapter 16. A loss for the Leaf. All 4 cages were fighting Orochimaru along with 3 previous cages. Minato, Namakazi, Hashirama and Tobarama. Senju, Mei Onoki and Hiruzen were each fighting a different opponent. Mei was fighting Tobarama, whose water jutsu cancelled her lava, and vice versa. I was fighting Minato, but while still outmatched in speed, Onoki was facing Hashirama and he was actually getting somewhere. While Hiruzen was fighting Orochimaru, the cage's bodyguards were outside of the purple barrier that 4 sound ninja had put up to separate them. Damn, Yugito yelled as she quickly kicked a sand ninja away. Why the hell is there always a problem? Killer Bee, who was dealing with the ninja around him, with ease began rapping, "Relax little kitten, it's all right, just lay back and enjoy the fight." He rapped terribly. Everyone in the area sweat-dropped at the man's rapping skills but soon ignored it to focus on fighting the enemy. Then a boy with white hair appeared out of nowhere in front of Yugito. She rose an eyebrow at the unfamiliar boy. "Hey kid." She dodged a kunai that was thrown in midair. "This is a battlefield, get to safety." The boy turned around and faced the two-tailed Jinchuriki. "I'm aware," he said in a dead voice. His eyes were dead as well, unnerving her. He then proceeded to kick a sound Jonin in the stomach before taking the ninja's own kunai and shoved it down in the ninja's neck and then flipping over the body, dragging the kunai through his flesh and down his back. He then used the now bloodied kunai to prick his thumb before putting the now drawn blood on his left hand, making a red sword appear in his right hand. He threw the kunai at the Jonin Yugito had kicked away, impaling him in the throat. "Where are the cages fighting?" he asked the girl in red with short black hair. Kuretsuchi pointed at the purple barrier. "They're in there, though you won't be able to get in. No one has." Naruto just disappeared and then appeared within the barrier, shocking all of those present. "What, how'd he do that?" Yugito yelled. Naruto just kept walking towards where he had heard fighting. When he had entered, he continued walking until he saw a yellow flash along with an angry Raikage covered in lightning going at high speeds. His eyes narrowed considerably. "That yellow flash can only be one man, but he's supposed to be dead." Naruto murmured to himself, "But I can deal with that. I need to find Gigi." He and Mei are the only one he actually cared about, but his Gigi was the number one priority at the moment. He felt Hiruzen's chakra and shushined to it. He appeared in the middle of Hiruzen, making a mud dragon that was being sent towards the snake. Sannin Orochimaru dodged the mud dragon by jumping in the air before a sword came out of his mouth and his head extended towards Hiruzen. Naruto quickly jumped in front of the blade before deflecting it with his own blade. Orochimaru, who was surprised to see his blade dodged but by a teenager no less, he quickly pulled his head back to its rightful place before pulling the sword back into his gut. "And who might you be?" he said with a smirk. Naruto turned towards him, a look of uncaring on his face. "How about I give you a reminder, Orochimaru?" he said in a dead tone before charging Orochimaru with incredible speeds that were on close to the Sannin's own. "Naruto-kun," said Hiruzen in a voice of disbelief. "How are you?" He trailed off, not finding any words. Naruto ignored the old man's words as he was too focused on trying to hit the Sannin with his sword, who was dodging the swipes with his unnatural flexibility. He then tried to deliver a punch of his own but was surprised to see his fist being caught in midair by the teen. "You're not going to win so easily this time," Orochimaru smirked. "Oh really, and how are you going to prevent that?" Orochimaru said as he tried to battle for dominance in strength as they pushed against each other. Now it was Naruto's turn to smirk. "Watch this." Orochimaru was then kicked in the head by a shadow clone. "You see, your cockiness will get the best of you, and as long as you underestimate me you will always lose." Orochimaru charged Naruto with a snarl on his face before a large wooden staff hit him in the face, causing him to fly across the rooftop. "If we do this, we do this together," Hiruzen said, a tired smile on his face. He patted Naruto on the shoulder. "It's good to see you." Naruto let a rare smile cross his face. "You as well, Gigi." Orochimaru then appeared again. He was about to charge again before the other three cages appeared before him. "We did it, Hokage Dono, we sealed them back," Mei said out of breath. Hiruzen smirked. "Good, now I shall fix the mistake I made a long time ago." Hiruzen charged Orochimaru, his staff raised before he was suddenly stabbed in the heart by another Orochimaru, a shadow clone. "Kukuku, I've finally got you, you foolish old man." Orochimaru chuckled as the clone disappeared as Hiruzen fell to his knees, blood dripping out of his mouth. No! Naruto screamed as he suddenly appeared before Orochimaru. Two tails of Kurama's chakra were coming out from behind his waist. His eyes, red with black slits, he stabbed Orochimaru with both of the tails of chakra, causing the man to cough up a good amount of blood. "I'll kill you," he screamed as the tails went in and out of the man's stomach, each one causing a larger hole than the other. He then tried to bite the man with his now sharpened teeth, but was surprised to see his teeth sink into that of a red-haired girl with a turban around her head and a flute in her hand. He quickly stopped his jaws from closing completely, but couldn't help but cringe when he felt his canines sink into the girl's neck at least a little bit, putting a little of the Kyuubi's chakra into her and a small mark to appear on her neck, one right next to her curse mark. Her eyes rolled back into her skull as she went limp and fell onto the ground. Orochimaru was then seen being supported by two guys and a man with two heads before they all jumped away, leaving the roof and Konoha as fast as they could. Naruto grit his teeth before making a clone to take the girl to a hospital, and he went towards Hiruzen, who was lying down on the ground. "Gigi. Gigi, no, I wasn't fast enough," he whispered, a steady flow of tears rolling down his face. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't strong enough." Hiruzen looked at Naruto with sad eyes. "I always thought of you as a grandson. I love you like one too." Naruto just closed his eyes. "Look at me." Naruto opened his eyes up and stared into the older man's eyes. "Please take care of Konoha for me, promise me." Naruto nodded roughly, not trusting his voice. Then Hiruzen went limp, the life coming out of his body. Then it was official. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Konoha, was dead. Chapter 17 Berserker. The funeral for Hiruzen Sarutobi and all of the other ninjas that had died during the invasion was sad. The heavens had cried for the loss of the old man in the way of rain. It didn't stop raining for 3 whole days, making the village called Konoha more miserable than it already was. Naruto was currently on the road with Jiraiya of the Sannin, trying to find the newest Hokage. Naruto, who was actually considered for the job, had declined, saying he wasn't ready for the position just yet. When the elders asked him to, saying he was too young and inexperienced to lead a village. Flashback: Naruto was standing in front of the grave of Hiruzen Sarutobi. His eyes were half-lidded as if they contained no life in them. "I'm sorry," he said in a neutral tone, his voice low. "I wasn't strong enough to save you or kill that bastard. He got away, but we do have one of his ninjas captured. I'll be interrogating her soon enough." He placed a hand on the stone that had the name of the late Hokage's name on it. "I swear I'll get stronger no matter what I do, no matter what it takes. I'll get stronger to protect the ones I love. No one I care about will die if I have anything to do with it," he whispered. "Well, I would hope so," said an old voice. Naruto stood up and turned around before seeing two old people who he knew as Homura and Koharu. The one who had spoke was Homura. "We need Hokages that care about their people." Naruto rose an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" he asked. Koharu stepped forward. "What we mean is that we want you to be the 5th Hokage, continuing the legacy of the mantle from not only your father but from your grandfather as well." Naruto turned around and looked at Hiruzen. "I apologize, but you will have to look for someone else. I am not currently stable to be Hokage. If this was before my death I would accept, but now I cannot. I am inexperienced and I wish to get some by the time I do take up the mantle," he said. "Why not ask Jiraiya? I'm sure Gigi would have liked for him to become Hokage." Homura sighed sadly. "He was our first choice, you were our second. Much like you, he had declined, saying that he was needed outside of the village and we had no reason but to accept his answer as we shall yours. It shows maturity that you would refuse when you are stable. The next Hokage will be informed that you should be the next one. You will have the full support of the council." Naruto turned around and bowed slightly. "I am honored, thank you," was all he said before vanishing into thin air. Flashback end. They were on a mission to find Tsunade Senju, the slug Sanin. She was to be the next Hokage, seeing as she was one of the only options left, leaving only Kakashi Hatake to be next, or Danzo Shimura, and Naruto would be damned if he let that happen. They arrived into a small town and checked into a hotel before Jiraiya gave Naruto a sympathetic look. Hey, I'm going to go and see what I can dig up about Tsunade. Stay here and entertain yourself. And try not to get into any trouble, he said. Naruto just nodded slightly before opening a book about seals and reading it. After a while of reading, Naruto felt 2 foul chakra signatures. He sighed before slowly getting up and jumping out of the window of the hotel room and landing on the ground, easily startling the nearby civilians. He looked up at the room he was in before it exploded, causing the civilians to scream in panic and run away from the building. Can't have any civilians dying because of what will take place, he thought before looking at the room that was now caught on fire. Hey, if you want to fight me, follow my chakra signature, he called out before vanishing into thin air and reappearing into a large open field that seemed that it was boxed in by a small forest. Then a swirling vortex appeared and out came 2 tall people in black cloaks littered with red clouds on them. One of them had black spiky hair and their face was covered with a orange mask that had one eye hole that was created by a spiral. The other was a man with blue shark-like skin with a mist headband with a slash through it. He recognized this one. It's been a while, hasn't it, Kisame-san, he said, his voice neutral. Kisame rose an eyebrow. I don't think I recognize you, brat. All I know is that I've been ordered to take that fox out of your body. Naruto's eyes narrowed. The years in hell he had somehow grown attached to the female fox that was constantly in humanoid form. She had supported him and tried to talk to him and make him ignore the pain he had went through. Whether you remember me or not is of no consequence, he said, taking out a kunai and cutting his finger and pulling up his sleeve and running the blood down his forearm, making a red sword come out. Kisame's eyes widened. That's Naruto interrupted him. Kushina Uzumaki's sword, the only person to fight all 7 swordsmen of the mist and survive as the victor, letting all of them keep their lives. Now you are the only one alive of the original 7. Only one brat can have a sword like this, Naruto. He nodded. Looks like you remember now. Tell me, what are you doing with the Akatsuki? This time the man in the orange mask spoke up, his voice high and cheerful. Ooh, you know too much. Leader Sama won't be pleased, he yelled in a loud kid voice. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the masked member of the Akatsuki. Come on, put away the facade, Madara, he said in a small whisper, and the man's posture immediately straightened, actually looking dangerous like his partner. I can only wonder how you have this information, he said, his voice now dark and serious. You know more about the Akatsuki than you should. Naruto smirked. You dare tell me I know too much? You should know who my sensei is. Madara nodded. Indeed, Itachi Uchiha. He would have been useful to our organization, he said. Now that's enough chit-chat, Kisame. Let us get the Kyuubi. Naruto quickly held his sword in a reverse grip. Over my dead body, he said in a defensive tone. Madara chuckled humorlessly. Trust me, that's all there is going to be after we take the Kyuubi away from you, he said before he nodded towards Kisame. If you will. Kisame nodded before charging Naruto with shocking speeds, his sword sharkskin out and ready. Naruto blocked the incoming blade with difficulty but diverted it to the side, making it hit the ground, making a loud thump. Jumping back, Naruto quickly made one-handed seals before the earth around Kisame started sinking. He quickly jumped across sinking earth and launched a water bullet from his mouth towards the snow-haired boy. Naruto vanished out of sight before appearing next to Madara, swiping his sword in a horizontal slash, aiming for the masked man's torso, but to his dismay it just went through the legendary man. He was kicked away by the same man who had somehow avoided his attack. Naruto stood back up unfazed, causing Madara to raise an eyebrow from under his mask. You have a high pain tolerance. Naruto vanished again and this time appeared before Kisame, trying to slice his head off but watched as his sword was blocked by Kisami's own. You've gotten better, kid, Kisame complimented as he swung the sword next to Naruto, letting his sword eat Naruto's seemingly endless chakra. Naruto said before he exploded, causing Kisame to take the full force of the attack, tearing his Akatsuki robes and leaving black soot on his shark-like skin. Naruto then appeared in front of Kisame, his sword out, his eyes boring into Kisami's skull. You're outmatched, he said. Simply. Kisame smirked. You may have gotten better, but you're still no match for me, brat. Naruto shook his head. I'm not talking about me, he said before Jiraiya suddenly appeared before him along with Tsunade, Shizune and a pig. He looked at both of them. Took you long enough, he said. Tsunade rose an eyebrow. Jiraiya, who is this kid? Jiraiya laughed, patting Naruto's shoulder. It's your godson Tsunade Haim. Tsunade's eyes widened at seeing her godson like this, lifeless and with white hair. Naruto, she whispered, meant to be a statement but sounded like a question. Naruto only nodded, not looking at the blonde-haired woman. Kisame, who seemed ready to charge, was stopped by Madara. We are currently outmatched, Kisame. We could handle one Sannin easily, but two, including two apprentices, I'm not so sure. Let us leave, he said before they disappeared in a swirling vortex. Naruto then looked over at the forest, his eyes glaring at it dangerously. You, he said with so much hatred, ki coming off his body in waves, making everyone present start to choke on the air from the sheer pressure. Then Kabuto and Orochimaru then appeared. Orochimaru looked sick, his stomach had several bandages surrounding it. Then a group of 4 appeared. One had dark skin with black hair and 6 arms. The other had a orange mohawk and was fat. One had gray hair and 2 heads. Finally, the other one had long white hair with 2 red dots on his forehead. Yes, me, Naruto-kun. I've come here personally to thank you for giving me chakra poisoning that not even Kabuto can heal. Naruto grit his teeth. Come over here and I'll give you more than chakra poisoning, he shouted. Orochimaru shrugged. If that's what you wish. He was about to charge before he was faced with Jiraiya and Tsunade. Now let's make this fair. Kabuto takes Tsunade, I'll take Jiraiya. Sound 4. You take the white-haired brat, he ordered, earning confirms by his followers. I'll give you one chance and one chance only. Leave Orochimaru and this place and I'll let you live. Naruto warned the 4 sound shinobi but was then laughed at. You're a fool, we won't abandon Orochimaru-sama. The one with white hair said. Naruto closed his eyes as a huge wave of gray chakra lashed out like a sword from his body, hitting the young man, making him hit the ground hard. Naruto then disappeared and reappeared by the fat one, slicing his head off with general ease before taking the body and throwing it at the spider-looking one and disappearing. The one with 2 heads looked around, a look of fear on his face. Where the hell is he? He found out the hard way as a red sword impaled his heart. Right here, you sick freak, he whispered before jumping back, making a few hand seals and burning the 2-headed teen to a crisp with a basic fireball jutsu. The one with white hair charged Naruto, a sword made of bone, ready to kill him, but was surprised when the red sword Naruto was wielding sliced his bone sword with general sword, decapitating the bone user. Naruto then turned to the dark-skinned man who had gotten the fat man off him. He started to run. That choice is gone now, he shouted, a weird sound of glee in his voice, scaring everyone present, including Orochimaru, shocked that the boy seemed to be taking pleasure in kill Orochimaru's bodyguards. Naruto disappeared and reappeared in front of the spider-like shinobi before stabbing him in the stomach and dragging the blade up, slicing him in half from the waist up. He smirked, wiping the blood on his face with his sleeve, only smearing it further upon his face. Naruto, look out, Jiraiya shouted as he tried to run towards the white-haired boy but was too slow. As Orochimaru's sword which came out of his mouth sliced through Naruto's left arm, cutting it off in. Naruto was kicked away, crashing into the dirt, kicking it up in many places. Shizune, stop the bleeding, Tsunade yelled, currently being occupied by Kabuto. Shizune rushed to the boy and quickly did a diagnosis jutsu. Tsunade-sama, it's poisoned. Orochimaru cackled, kukuku indeed, he laughed. You bastard, Jiraiya yelled. Shizune yelled again, he needs treatment and fast, she yelled. She was about to speak again before a maniacal laugh was heard coming from the boy. Naruto was standing up, blood dripping down his arms, his eyes were wide and bloodshot. He kept laughing, his head twisted at a weird angle. She died again, he said. His voice was rough and cracked like he hadn't had water in ages, a crazy tone to it. Oops, there goes my arm, he shouted crazily, and another leg. Genjutsu, let's watch them all die again, he said. I'm healing again, he shouted, his voice getting crazier, his movements that of a maniac than what would haunt all shinobi present. Naruto's arm grew back in a short burst, Naruto having a crazy smile on his face the whole time, his rational mind gone, replaced with a less stable on them. I have to do it again, I have to do it again, he shouted crazily, his eyes focused on Orochimaru. Die, 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 he shouted over and over again as he rushed towards the snake Sannin, as his now clawed fingernails found themselves impaling the snake Sannin. He then kicked the nuke nin into the ground before ruthlessly stabbing him all over the body with his now bloody arm that had been cut off. He quickly threw the Sannin across the field, disappearing in a brink of speed that rivaled Minato Namakazi and biting Orochimaru's arms off, feeding on it viciously. I haven't eaten it years, he screamed in delight, blood running down his chin. He looked at Orochimaru again and threw the mutilated arm on the ground and pinned the Sannin on the ground. Die, he screamed in a crazed, insane voice as he began slicing the man's throat and taking his eyes out with his claws, relishing in delight the screams of the snake Sannin. Orochimaru was dead, killed by Naruto. Naruto sat on the body of the now deceased snake Sannin. He turned around, his face had a grin on it. My toy broke, I need a new one, he shouted in glee as he rushed towards Jiraiya but was suddenly hit by a barrier, knocking him unconscious. Jiraiya scooped up the boy in his arms. What happened to you in hell? He whispered sadly. Tsunade appeared by Jiraiya. Kabuto was gone. Tell me everything, she demanded. Chapter 18 Monster. What do you mean he went to hell and then came back? Tsunade shouted. Jiraiya then explained everything that Naruto had told him. They were all in a motel room, Naruto lying on the bed with Shizune close by, so that caused him to turn into a psychopath, she yelled. Jiraiya glared at her. He's literally been to hell and back, wouldn't you have a broken mind too? And that's what Naruto woke up to hearing. He sat up suddenly, shocking the almost sleeping girl next to him. You're right, I am a psychopath. He then lurched forward and threw up the human flesh he had eaten from Orochimaru's arm and wiped the blood off of his mouth. I'm a monster, he whispered as slow hot tears ran down his face. You're not a monster, Naruto, Tsunade said as she quickly hugged the boy. He just simply stayed there, comfortable that she was there, hugging him. After a while of not speaking, he pulled back from her embrace. But I am a monster, you don't know what it's like to see yourself do those things and enjoy it, he yelled. I loved killing those ninja, I loved killing Orochimaru, I relished it. Tsunade was taken aback by these words. Where's the Naruto I used to know, back when he was always happy? She stuttered, a tear flowing down her cheek. Naruto turned around and opened the door and stood there for a second. He died the moment he went to hell, he whispered just loud enough for them to hear before walking out of the door and closing it. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya with determination in her eyes, a new desire to living. become the 5th Hokage Jiraiya just so I can see him smile again. Jiraiya smiled warmly at her. You really love him like a son, don't you? With Naruto. Naruto was eating at a ramen place, not the regular Ichiraku ramen shop, but it would do for now. After he finished, he paid for it and left. While he was walking down the street, he was approached by an attractive woman dressed in very little clothing. Hey, wanna have a good time? She said flirtatiously. Naruto just kept walking, ignoring her. Hey, don't ignore me, she shouted. Naruto stopped walking, turned around and looked at her. I don't have time for whores, leave me alone, he said in a neutral tone. He turned around and began walking again when he was suddenly hit in the head with a glass bottle, shattering all over his head. He closed his eyes and turned around. Now tell me who the fuck did that, he said, emphasizing fuck, his eyes wide open, glaring at the crowd that had stopped to look. I did, said a young man a few years older than Naruto, maybe 17 or 18. He had a small beard growing at the tip of his chin and had long blonde hair. Naruto tilted his head, his eyes wide. Now why would you do that, he said, a small crazed smile appearing on his face as he took a step forward. The foolish young man, not knowing the danger he was now in, only smirked and started walking towards Naruto. Because you dare disrespect a lady in Tanzuku Town. Naruto just took another step forward. And who are you to be telling me? The man smirked again. I'm the village leader's son. Naruto's crazed smile grew larger. Good, that means he can pay for your medical bill after I'm finished with you. The man's face twisted into one with rage as he charged Naruto, a fist ready, but his eyes widened when he couldn't see the white-haired boy anymore. He went to a stop before he heard a chilling voice. Looking for me? Naruto whispered before he grabbed the man's elbow and hit it, bending his whole arm into an awkward angle. Loving the snap it made, he then brought his leg down, connecting to the man's knee, breaking the man's leg as well. He smiled at the man's screams of agony. He lifted the man up by the collar. If you ever cross me again, I'll kill you, okay, he said in a happy tone before throwing the man away and putting his hands in his pockets and walking away like nothing happened. He kept walking until he was in an open field. He sighed. I'm bored, he said before making 200 shadow clones. Okay, all of you against me, he shouted, a grin on his face as he rushed towards his clones, meeting them in battle, his sword in hand. Laughing, Shizune watched in amazement as the white-haired shinobi demolished his clones with surprising ease. Then again, this was the same shinobi that had killed Orochimaru with his bare hands and teeth. She shivered at that thought, the images replaying in her mind. After he was done, she slowly approached him, a nervous smile on her face. Hey, she stuttered before blushing a shade of red from embarrassment. Naruto turned around, looking into her eyes. Hello, Shizune-san, he said. Did Tsunade send you? She shook her head. I came here because I was curious about you and what you went through. Naruto turned around, making her face his back. I've already told Jiraiya everything. He most likely already told you. Shizune's face turned to one with sadness. He did, but I doubt you told him everything, she said. The way you acted, the things you said, isn't what one would say who just had his limbs cut off every day. Naruto turned around. You're right, was all he said, not elaborating any more than he had to. Shizune bravely walked up to him, grabbed him by the shoulders, and sat him down on the cool grass as she sat in front of him. Tell me, you need to tell someone these things, so tell me, she said with conviction, complete and utter determination on her face. Naruto sighed. Fine, it all started. Flashback. Naruto had just regrown his limbs. Mr. L, or Lucifer, was wiping the blood away. Lucifer clicked his tongue. 2 years of straight physical torture. Looks like you still have spirit in you, he said. Naruto's breathing was ragged and roughed his pained eyes, looking at the man with hatred. Go fuck yourself, he said. His voice was as if he hadn't had waters in years and he hadn't. Lucifer laughed. You know what, he said, going up towards Naruto. I'm a let You see everyone you ever loved die, he said as he covered Naruto's eyes with a black cloth, taking away his vision. Naruto sat in the darkness for what seemed like hours before he heard her voice. Naruto why? Naruto opened up his eyes and saw a bloodied Sayuri standing in front of him. He quickly ran forward, grabbing her body, ignoring the blood. What do you mean? He whispered. Trying to stop the blood flowing from her stomach, she pointed at him. You killed everyone, she said. Naruto looked around and saw a leveled Konoha, everyone he knew and cared about, dead, mutilated like they were killed by a monster. You did this, I hate you, she said, hate obvious in her voice before she fell limp in his arms. Naruto had tears running down his face, then felt a familiar voice. You had one job and you failed. Naruto turned around in shock to see Itachi standing tall, a thin line of blood trailing down his chin. Why'd I have to get a failure of a student like you? He said before falling down on the ground face first. Naruto looked up in the air and screamed a scream filled with pain and anguish. Then his vision appeared back to that room again. He looked around and saw Lucifer standing there, a smirk on his face. Now that's over with. Now I'm going to force you to kill everyone you care about. Naruto's eyes widened in fear before his vision shifted again. This time he was standing in front of Sayuri, a kunai in his hands. He watched in horror as his hand moved forward on its own, stabbing her in the heart. She fell to the ground and Naruto saw a line behind her now dead body. He cried silently. 1 year later in hell, Naruto had finished killing everyone he had cared about. No longer being forced, doing it on his own. His vision cleared and he was back, chained to the chair. And into the room he looked up and saw Lucifer standing there, his eyes smiling with glee before he gave off a maniacal laugh. Again, he shouted, laughing crazily as he smiled, began thrashing around. Lucifer started laughing. I finally broke you, finally, he shouted. He walked up to Naruto's broken laughing form. Back at it again, he said, slamming the sledgehammer on his kneecaps, shattering it. Flashback end. And that's what happened, he said. Shizune kept silent. So you killed everyone you cared about, even Jiraiya, Tsunade and I? Naruto reluctantly nodded his head. I'm sorry, he said, his voice filled with shame. He was surprised when he was hugged. How old are you, Naruto? She asked. 14 physically, 19 mentally, he said. She just hugged him tighter. Someone like you shouldn't have gone through something like that. I'm so sorry, she said as tears ran down her face. You were so young, she cried. Naruto awkwardly hugged her back. It's not anyone's fault but mine. Please stop crying, he whispered. Shizune sniffed before she became still, her breathing steady. She was asleep. Naruto sighed before looking at the sky before falling asleep himself, his arms still wrapped around the brown-haired woman. Chapter 19 Interrogation. Jiraiya, Tsunade, Naruto and Shizune had finally returned to Konoha and Naruto was greeted by Sayuri, Tenten, Ino and surprisingly Tamari. He rose an eyebrow. Hey, not that I'm complaining, but what are you girls doing here? Naruto said. His voice seemed to have emotion in them which made all of the girls happier. We got news that you were coming back today. And Ino, Sayuri said, nodding at the blonde, dragged all of us here. I'm here because I wanted to say bye before I leave for Suna today. Naruto nodded. Well, it was nice having you around, Tamari-chan. Tamari blushed a little before walking up to him and kissing him on the cheek before Gaara and Kankuro showed up. You hurt my sister, I'll kill you, Gaara said, giving Naruto a glare. Naruto went up to Gaara and stuck out his hand. Deal. Gaara shook his hand, grains of sand floating around their hands as the onlookers watched in amazement. Have safe travels, Gaara of the sand. The same for you, Naruto. Namakazi. Instantly Naruto's face was stoic and he let go of Gaara's hand. Please never call me by that again, Naruto. Just Naruto, he said, his voice back to being emotionless before he walked away from the group. What was all that about? Tamari asked. Jiraiya shook his head sadly. He hates his father now. He blames him for putting him through hell. Sayuri's eyes widened. But I'm the one who accidentally killed him. How can he hate his own father? Tsunade's eyes narrowed at the girl. You killed that boy, she yelled before she was restrained by both Jiraiya and Shizune. She didn't know. Him let it go, he whispered. Tsunade stopped trying to punch the ever-living shit out of Sayuri and walked away angrily, being followed by Shizune and a pig. Sayuri was looking at the ground, her hands clenched into fist. It's not fair, she said between gritted teeth, tears running down her cheeks. Why does he suffer so much? Why is he the one who goes through so much pain? She looked at Jiraiya. Tell me, god damn it. I don't know, kid. Jiraiya said sadly. Sayuri just stormed off and Jiraiya sighed. Well, guess it's back to the ol' research for my next book, he said before running off to the nearest hot springs with my crazy lil' Naruto stood outside of the Namakazi estate. He had every jutsu and all of the sealing scrolls inside one scroll, planning on learning every little bit. Then two shadow clones appeared before the snow-haired shinobi. All done, boss. It's everywhere. Not an inch is not covered of that entire house. Naruto nodded. Good, was all he said before the clones dispelled themselves. He made one hand seal before holding his fingers to his lips, fire-style devouring fire tornado. He spoke softly before a large tornado of fire came out of his mouth, and right when the fire tornado hit the wall of the estate, it had instantly caught fire. The clones were spreading gasoline around the house so that it would burn easier and quicker. He actually smiled as he felt the heat from the intense flames come off in waves. A gasp was heard from behind him. Naruto. What have you done? Naruto turned around and saw the same group of girls from earlier except for Sayuri and Ino, and this time Sakura was there. Burning down the fourth Hokage's house, he said as if they were dumb. What does it look like? Why would you do that to your own home? Sakura yelled. Naruto laughed. This my home. This place will never be my home. I haven't slept there for a single second in my entire life, and I haven't even stepped in that shithole. He laughed manically. So why the fuck not? I mean, it's my property. I can do whatever the hell I want with it. This isn't like you, Naruto-kun. Snap out of it, Tenten yelled. Where's that boy who always smiled and wore that red scarf around his face and helped me in the weapons shop? She said, a tear sliding down her cheek. Naruto's eyes softened. He's dead, Tenten-chan. He died. This, he said, gesturing towards himself, is the real me now, and if you can't accept that, he looked away, then we can't be friends anymore. Then he disappeared in one of his many famous shushins. The next day Naruto stood in front of the cell that held Orochimaru's last of the Sound 5. She was around his age or maybe a year older, with long red hair, and was in the traditional orange wear that prisoners wore. Hello to Yuya. Naruto spoke plainly as he opened the cell and then closed it behind him. We're going to have a little talk. What are you going to do? Shithead, torture me, rape me, she yelled. You fucking cunt, you better get the fuck away from me, you little shit. She was hit gently on the forehead with the dull side of Naruto's sword. He looked annoyed. Geez, just shut up for a second so I can talk. She was about to talk again before she got gently his again by the sword. She rubbed her forehead but remained quiet. Okay, now let us begin. Let's exchange a little information, shall we? You give me every little piece of you know of Orochimaru's bases around the shinobi nations, and I'll give you some information on what the seal on your neck is. Yuya glanced at the weird seal that was once her curse mark. No way, you're going to have to do better than that. Naruto rolled his eyes. Fine, what would you say if I were to say Orochimaru was dead? Yuya's eyes widened. She looked at him in confusion. The understanding dawned her face. I would believe you. I don't feel his constant presence around my body anymore. Naruto nodded. Well, he is dead. I killed him about a week ago. Please do not ask how. I don't want to get into the details. Yuya smirked. You kill that bastard, yeah right. Naruto smirked in return. Oh really? He said before bringing out Kusanagi. I pulled this out of his stomach after our fight took place. Now tell me, believe me now. Tayuya swallowed the saliva in her mouth and nodded. This boy wasn't any other genin or chunin. He killed one of the Sannin and now her life was in his hands. Naruto noticed her look and picked up on her train of thought. No, I'm not going to kill you. As a matter of fact, I can't kill you. You see, that seal of yours binds your soul to mine. If you die or if I die, we both die. Which sucks in my opinion, but meh, we'll have to deal with it together. Wait, so you're saying that if your dumbass gets killed, I'll die? What type of fucking logic is that? She yelled. Naruto then grew red. Well, that seal on your neck doesn't just bind our souls, it's kinda a mate mark, he said, looking down at the ground, not being able to meet her eyes, but to her surprise she actually laughed. She laughed for a good minute before wiping a tear away. Oh wow, that's fucking hilarious, she said. If the bastard hadn't used the replacement jutsu, you would have been binded by him, she shouted before bouncing into another fit of laughter. Hey, it's not funny, this is serious, Naruto yelled while she was laughing. We're mates now. Oh god, what am I going to tell everyone I'm binded to? The enemy, he said comically, making Tayuya laugh once again. Great job, you made me laugh for real. I haven't laughed in a very long time, and that was when I saw Kimimaro kick Kitamaru in the balls, she said, a genuine smile on her face. And for that I shall spill the beans on all of that bastard's bases. A couple hours later. And that's it? Naruto asked the redhead, getting a nod in reply. Yep. He had a lot, but I'm pretty damn sure that's all of his bases, Tayuya said. Naruto smiled before standing up. Well, thank you, Tayuya, Naruto said before opening the cell door. He looked back, and I'm going to get you out of here, I promise, Taiyu-chan, he promised, making the Tayuya's cheeks go red. Before he closed the cell door, Tayuya laid down on the bed, clutching her pillow to her chest, a faint smile on her face. You better, shithead-kun, she said in a whisper before falling asleep. Chapter 20. Promotions. Naruto stood in front of the now deemed fifth Hokage, a small smirk on his face. It was promotion time, and he fully expected to be promoted to special jonin, at the very least. Tea with him were all of the Konoha genin that had taken part in the exams and made it to the finals no matter who lost. Tsunade took a deep breath before she started talking. Congratulations to all of you who had participated in the third exams of the Chunin exams. We are here to talk about promotions. Neji, Sayuri, Rock Lee, Shikamaru and Naruto were beaming with pride. Well, not Shikamaru or Naruto. Shikamaru was too lazy to care, and Naruto was confident enough that he had made it. Those who are being promoted to Chunin are Shikamaru Nara and Rock Lee. Shikamaru, even though you lost your match, you used your intelligence to try and stop your opponent Lee. You have amazing taijutsu prowess. There are very few people in this world who you would not be able to beat in a straight taijutsu match. Lee nodded happily, but thankfully didn't say anything. Tsunade handed both now newly promoted Chunin their new vest and watched with a pleased smile as they put it on. Geez, more work and harder missions, what a drag, Shikamaru complained, earning a jab in the ribs courtesy of Sayuri, who had a small smile on her face. Sure, she was a little disappointed that she wasn't promoted, but that wasn't the least of what she deserved. She deserved to go through what Naruto went through, in hell or so. She thought. Tsunade had special jonin vest in her right hand, and Naruto felt a rare grin cross his face. Itachi would be proud of him now, and that's what he craved, for recognition from his sensei. But his heart sank when Tsunade started talking. And I am going to promote Sasaki Ken to special jonin. Due to his heroism during the invasion of the Sound and Sand, a weird guy with glasses stepped forward, a smile on his face as he took the vest. Couldn't think of a name, so. And that is all. Everyone is dismissed. She sat back down but rose an eyebrow as a hand slammed down on the desk. What in the hell? Naruto shouted. Why didn't I get promoted? He yelled. Tsunade's face didn't change at all, keeping that same blank stare she gave when she was serious. Because you're not ready to be a chunin, she said as if it were obvious. Naruto's face twisted into a dark mix of rage and confusion. What the hell do you mean? He yelled. I stopped a whole bunch of people from being killed, academy students and the genins that you just fucking promoted. I was offered the fucking job you have right now. Before you were, I should be a fucking jonin, or at least a special jonin, and you wanna know what else I did? Something that you could never even possibly imagine yourself doing. I killed Orochimaru of the so-called fucking Sannin. He turned away, a glare on his face. When I watched Gigi die, I hoped they'd find a good replacement, one to make the right calls. I guess they didn't, he said harshly. I am. You're not mentally stable. It would be dangerous to keep you in charge of a team at this moment. Naruto smirked. Not mentally stable, huh? He whispered, his voice low and dark. That's not what I meant, Naruto. I just, Tsunade began, but was cut off by the white-haired shinobi. I request a leave of absence for 4 years, Hokage-sama. Apparently I'm a danger to the village now. I need to get stable. He said that word with so much venom it made the blonde-haired Hokage flinch. Only he could call himself mentally unstable, not anyone else. What if I say request denied? Naruto turned around, his face blank but eyes utterly serious. I wasn't really asking, to be honest. I'm leaving and I'm taking someone with me. I don't know, but someone in general, he said, shocking everyone in the room. You'll be a missing nin if you leave without permission. Naruto laughed. That's why I actually used the words request and sama. He adopted a thoughtful look. Actually, sama is a suffix, so that's why I used the word request and the suffix sama, otherwise you'd never hear it out of me. Tsunade sighed. I need a drink, she muttered before looking up. Permission granted. Naruto gave a mock bow. I'll be leaving in 3 hours. If you wanna say bye, meet me at the gate. I'm not going searching for any of you, he said to the others before he disappeared in a shushin. 3 hours later, Naruto stood in front of the gates surrounded by his fellow genin and newly promoted chunin friends. He was kissed on the cheek by all the girls except for Sayuri, who had yet to show, and shook hands with every guy. Hey shithead, a familiar voice yelled, causing Naruto to look past his friends to see a girl with long red hair coming his way. Oh hey Taiyu-chan, you ready to go? She nodded eagerly, happy to get out of this place. All the girls except for Sakura shouted simultaneously. You're taking her, they shouted, causing Tayuya to smirk, the other boys to sweat drop, and Naruto to rub the back of his head sheepishly. Well yeah, he said, I have my reasons. Tayuya had a smirk on her face as she clung to his arm. It's because I have a hotter body than any of you other bitches, she said. Naruto had to restrain all the girls with the help of Shikamaru and his shadow possession. Of course, Tayuya just stuck her tongue out at the girls before turning around. So, where are we going first, shithead? She chirped. Naruto looked back at her. Well, to be honest, I think we're going to Wave. Zabuza had a hideout somewhere and I want to see if he's left anything besides I want his sword. Tayuya shrugged. Sounds fine with me, shithead. Naruto deadpanned at her nickname for him but ignored it. He turned around again looking for a certain raven-haired girl only to see nothing. He let out an internal sigh. Guess she didn't like my little outburst, he thought sadly, before he turned around and started walking. Come on Taiyu-chan, we have ground to cover. I wanna get there by nightfall. She nodded as both teens were about to start running. A loud yell was heard. He turned around for the last fucking time and saw Sayuri, Shizune and Tsunade racing towards him. He paled to the color of his hair. Oh no, he whispered. His fears were right as all 3 women brought him into a large hug, holding none of their strength back, including Tsunade. We'll miss you, brat, Tsunade said as she kissed his forehead. He was then kissed on both cheeks at the same time by both Shizune and Sayuri causing him to turn red. Bye Naruto-kun, they said in unison. Naruto smiled. Weakly trying to get air back into his lungs, he gave both girls a hug. I'll miss you girls shit all. Miss all of you, see you in 4 years, he said, sadness in his eyes as he turned around and ran off. With Tayuya not looking back. ANND cut next part in 2 to 3 days. Bye.